This is Free Speech TV, and we're joining you from Netroots Nation 2025 in New Orleans. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host of Rising Up with Sonali, and I'll be bringing you conversations with change makers and activists attending the largest progressive political conference in the nation. Joining me now is Linda Sarsour, author of We Are Not Here to Be Bystanders, a memoir of love and resistance. She's a well-known Palestinian American Muslim, racial justice and civil rights activist, and seasoned community organizer. She calls herself, quote, every Islamophobe's worst nightmare. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much for having me, Sonali.
So we live nearly 2 years. This is a moment that's nearly 2 years into the worst chapter of Israel's genocide against Palestinians. This should have been and should be the biggest topic of concern at Netroots and anywhere in the nation. And yet in Congress, we can't even get enough members of the House to vote to stop arms sales to Israel. How do you feel about how far, or not far enough, congressional and legislative proposals and policies have come to holding Israel accountable in any way?
Unfortunately, we haven't come far enough, but I also don't want to take away the power of movement and the power of individuals who have been sitting at members of Congress's offices. They've been showing up to local districts, but also going to Washington, D.C. and calling their members of Congress. I think a lot of members have told me that they've never in history of being in office have ever received this many calls that are in support of, in solidarity with the Palestinian people. We recently saw an effort to stop bombs through Senator Bernie Sanders' joint resolution. And, you know, the numbers keep increasing, which is, again, we can't underestimate our work. We got to keep going. While it's not enough and we feel frustrated and outraged and disappointed, we're building power. And I think that's important to keep in mind. There is a piece of legislation on the table called Block the Bombs Act. And we're starting to see more members of Congress signing on to it in ways that they have never, ever stood in the way of military aid to Israel.
Benjamin Netanyahu has announced openly the agenda, most recently, of the Israeli government wanting to take over all of Gaza, which, of course, most of us saw that coming from a long time ago, but it's coming at the same time as nations around the world are now saying they want to recognize a Palestinian state and are pressuring some of them, the United States, to recognize a Palestinian state. Are these efforts to recognize a Palestinian state in this moment too little, too late, or are they still potentially an important step?
For the sake of the Palestinian people, nothing's too late for me. And I say that to people all the time. We could sit here in the U.S. and critique everything that happens, and we have every right to. But at the same time, for the sake of the Palestinian people, we require at this moment any form of solidarity or any form of powerful people who are trying to at least emulate some sort of solidarity with the Palestinian people. And while some of these new, declarations are, short from what we want, they're important in this moment. What we need is sanctions against the state of Israel. We need these countries to announce major sanctions against the state of Israel to force them into an economic state where they cannot, by any means, be able to keep moving forward with this genocide. We, the United States of America, are literally complicit. Israel cannot commit genocide without us. That is what people need to understand, and that is what makes this so horrific. It's not that the Palestinians are, the most, oppressed around the world, or that there isn't other horrific things that are happening. What makes this important in this moment for us as Americans is that we are complicit in it. It cannot happen without our support. So it's important for me. I think what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying is something we've always been saying. We knew that was the plan. We knew this was never about returning hostages. We knew that this wasn't just a campaign against Hamas. This was a plan that has been in the works for decades, where the state of Israel wants to reoccupy and take over Gaza. So people were saying we were just being, hyperbole, we were just exaggerating, and now they're just saying the quiet stuff out loud.
So much of this has to also do with the ways in which the U.S. media discusses Palestine and Palestinians and the discourse in political circles around Palestinians. And yet, in spite of this huge effort to silence Palestinian voices, we've seen the American public actually sort of educate itself in spite of all of this, to the point where it became a massive, major factor in our presidential election. Many people credit Kamala Harris losing the race because of this issue. What is your thought on how Palestinian stories, narrative and storytelling, how far it's come, who's responsible for helping it break through the mass silencing effort?
I mean, I'll start with entities like Free Speech TV. I'll talk about the WBAIs, the public radio, the opportunities for voices like ours to be centered in this moment, for giving Palestinians the opportunity to talk about how this is impacting us, not only as Palestinian Americans, but it impacts our families in Palestine. I'll give some credit to social media, to the citizen journalists of Gaza, who put their lives on the line to show the American people, to show the world what was happening in Gaza. I also give credit to the mothers who carried their dead babies to the cameras that showed you children without heads, fathers who were carrying their children's body parts in plastic bags. They were willing to put their pain and their loss to the people to say, this is what is happening to us. And there was no media outlet in the world that could, by any means, try to distort those types of stories. I believe in the power of people. And empathy of people, and no one can tell me what my eyes see. You can't tell me what the images that we're seeing are not real, and I think the American people in general are now much more pro-Palestinian. We've seen the polls. We have seen more people moving away from the support of the State of Israel, more people calling this genocide, more people reaffirming that Israel is an apartheid state. And more people just saying the Palestinian people don't deserve this. They deserve freedom. Those children deserve the things that our children have. And so the Israeli multi-billion-dollar propaganda machine has been dismantled. There is nothing that the State of Israel can do or say at this moment that will move people away from the imagery that they have watched 24 hours a day, live stream 7 days a week for the last 22 months.
And yet, it shouldn't have taken a genocide, right? It shouldn't have taken a genocide for the humanity of people who are being erased to be central. And everyone's, I can't remember the name of the Palestinian, I think it was a social media poet or author who said that at some point everybody will always have been against this. And we're seeing people now coming out of the woodworks whose voices could have been so much more helpful 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and who are now speaking up when there's less political cost to doing so, and that just seems regretful.
Yeah, and I say to people all the time, for the sake of the Palestinian people, we welcome anyone who's coming to the table at this moment, and there will be a people's tribunal one day, and we will be able to have those conversations with those that were silent for 22 months during genocide. But now you're welcome. Just this is the place that you should have been. But now we welcome you now, and stay brave. This is not just a trend or a moment of saying that we shouldn't be starving children, because that's the thing that kind of moved people, which was, for me, the most mind-boggling thing. That watching skeletal bodies of children was the thing that got people to speak up, but not the limbs that we saw, not the burned bodies, not the burned tents, not the body parts scattered around across the floors, not the wailing mothers. I mean, I'm just pretty dumbfounded about how forced famine became the thing that made people speak up. But again, for the sake of the Palestinian people, we welcome anyone right now who's willing to stand up to the State of Israel.
And yet the incredible silencing continues recently, of course, with the Trump administration announcing that it would hold emergency funding from states that engage in any kind of boycott of Israel. And of course, academics, activists like yourself, have so many times paid such a heavy price for speaking out, are still being made to pay a heavy price for speaking out, basically having to choose between their livelihoods and speaking out against a genocide. Is that crumbling? Is that failing? Or is there still a long ways to go in the fight to simply speak about Palestinians and Palestine without being censured?
So the Trump administration made that announcement that they would withhold FEMA money to cities or states that basically engage in any sort of boycott of Israel. And they had to immediately retract it. It's just not politically expedient anymore to do that. And as you know, over many years, we've fought in states across the country, including places like Texas, and have won against these anti-boycott legislations. But even now, yes, of course, students have paid the price, academics, nonprofit leaders, even nurses and doctors, and we've seen many, but we've also seen the fight back. And we have had wins recently. There was a lawsuit, Palestine Legal, which is an organization that represents many of these folks who are kind of victims of McCarthy-era type silencing. And the Council on American Islamic Relations sued the University of Maryland on behalf of the Students for Justice in Palestine chapter. And just 2 days ago, they won a $100,000 settlement just because the University of Maryland had blocked the SJP from doing a vigil for the Palestinian people. And so we're watching these fightbacks, we're watching people emerge, academics emerge out of investigations. So we're getting to see kind of both, but we're seeing a fight back in ways that we haven't been able to see in the past. And I will say to people, all of it is worth it. Yeah. Every lost job is worth it. Every lost paycheck is worth it. And I know that some people will say some of us speak from a place of privilege, but we don't. Because the people that are being targeted are often people of color. They're people from minority communities. Oftentimes they are adjunct professors, they're not tenured professors. There are people that have a lot to lose, and it's worth it. I regret nothing, and any pro-Palestinian voice that has been silenced or has been attacked will tell you themselves, it is worth standing against genocide and being on the right side of history.
It gets tiresome, doesn't it, to be vindicated over and over again and finding ourselves on the right side of history after facing a firestorm of opposition for so long.
Very exhausting, but worth it.
Finally, Linda, let's talk about how liberal spaces like Netroots Nation have had to have their own reckoning, because for a long time it was, the progressive except for Palestine trend was a strong one, and even within liberal spaces it was not always politically correct to speak up for Palestinian solidarity and to include that in one's activism. And that was part of the problem, right? Like even Democrats felt that, we can't criticize the state of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. That is changing now. Shouldn't have taken a genocide. But I'm wondering if you can speak to sort of liberals who have been part of the problem.
Absolutely. For me, it's, the liberals are the problem, because the opposition, you expect that from them. That's something I expect. I organize around that expectation, but I don't organize around the expectation that those who care about immigrant rights or care about reproductive rights or care about all these other issues, for some reason, will draw the line on Palestinian liberation, on a war machine, on this military-industrial complex that uses our earned taxpayer dollars to literally fund genocide, occupation, and siege. And so there's been many courageous conversations. In fact, in past years at Netroots, there have been activists that have challenged some spaces, challenged some speakers that have come here to speak about other issues and knowing their positions on this particular issue. And I think over time there's been evolution in the movement, including at places like Netroots. There are more panels about Palestine. We had a panel on AI warfare on Palestine and targeting groups like Google and Microsoft, Amazon, and doing a panel about organizing against fascism. That doesn't include Palestinian liberation is just not going to work. I mean, if you can't be someone who sees, if you want to be a progressive or want to be someone who says, I stand for human rights, I stand for social justice, Palestine is the litmus test in this moment as a genocide. You can't expect anyone in power here to do anything for marginalized people if they're funding a genocide, if they're staying silent on a genocide. So it's a lot of courageous conversation. Like I said, for the sake of the Palestinian people, we're willing to have those courageous conversations and help people move on and give people I wouldn't say a lot of grace, but some grace in getting people to the right space. But yes, progressive except for Palestine has been a major problem for decades in our movements.
Linda, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonali.
My guest has been Linda Sarsour, who is a well-known Palestinian Muslim American racial justice and civil rights activist. And I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host of Rising Up with Sonali, reporting for Free Speech TV from Netroots Nation 2025 in New Orleans.